All right, so this just came over my screen on my desk here today. It's about Costa Rica, and it's not to pick on Costa Rica. It could have been any country. It could be any state in the US. It could be any place that pulls punches below the belt like this. The headline said, Costa Rica to only allow US visitors from these states. This came across my desk. Yeah, all right, let's talk about this. I read John Howell's Choose Costa Rica back in the late 80s. Such a long time ago. You know, back then, reading that book, you could see that places like Costa Rica, they really welcomed foreigners. They were really eager to have them. They rolled out the welcome mat for them. You know, I mean, it's like they just had a lot of love for foreigners, you know? And foreigners were able to come in and had a lot of freedom. They had a lot of benefits, and they had a lot of freedom. They had, you know, they were welcome. But we live in a new age, as you know. And, you know, countries now like these that have been having foreigners go there for so many decades, and they have all this wealth now, whereas back then things were different. And just to be able to be so arrogant to say, you know, only US citizens from these states, and you know very well what states it's gonna be, right? It's interesting because I've been watching these things happen around the globe, and it's like the attitude is like, you know, we don't need you anymore. We're going to dictate now. Dictatorship, dictator. We're now going to dictate. We're not just going to, this isn't about just putting thresholds out, like showing how much income you got. This is way beyond that. This is a discriminatory practice, again, based on things that are not factual whatsoever. As I've said in previous videos, not factual, not historical, not scriptural, not based on science, and on, right? And yet, a place like this that says, you know, and it's political, of course, but the thing is that if we don't have a conviction about this kind of behavior, you're just gonna, you know, you're just gonna get sucked in. You're gonna get sucked in. You know, we should never feel like we must go to a certain place to visit, no matter what they say, no matter what they do, no matter what silly rules they throw out. It's like there's no place to go and we have to go. Well, that's just not true. It's just not so. I mean, if we don't have a conviction about this kind of thing, I urge you to look inward, and if you don't have enough information to formulate a conviction, I urge you to seek out the other side of the story. This way. Yeah, so you know, you get the occasional person go on there, yeah, I ran into one of your videos and you said this. Then they, you know, then they sit there and parrot the superficial narrative that those of us that have been going deeper for so long, I mean, just from the very, very beginning, back in, what was it, Angie, February or something, March?
February.
Back in the beginning, we saw right through it because of the type of people that we are.
Our very first video we ever made about this pandemic was spot on, and it still is. And
well,
we made it in February.
We saw right through it right away.
Yes.
Because of who we are. We're naturalists. We just have this background that, just like any other naturalist,
well,
I'm not putting us on a pedestal, any other naturalist or naturopath.
There's many reasons why, not just because of that, but too because we don't get into the politics and we don't get into the news and stuff like that. You could just see it.
The whistleblower doctors that come out and they're silenced, you know, so you've got this silencing going on. All right, so if you're looking for the truth, it means you don't only gravitate to one side. If we're well grounded in our conviction, and I realize that if we are, those of us that are well grounded in our understanding, may be a minority, but not necessarily. I see a lot of people that know, but don't ignore this and just say, you know, oh, well, I'm from those states, so I guess I can go to Costa Rica. You know, we should all band together and actually boycott Costa Rica, play their game with their own rules, and show them how smart their thinking is. Listen, I'm not making this up. I'm not the one coming up with this. I read an article that said that the people in, what was that northern European country, that they made a mandatory mask on the public transport, and as a sort of a pacifist protest, they weren't confrontational about it. They just decided, well, you know what? They got together on social media and decided to boycott the public transportation. The public transportation, they're going to take bicycles and they're going to use bicycles. Everybody in town is going to stay off the public transportation and use bicycles. Okay, so I think it was the Netherlands. But that's the kind of conviction I'm talking about, that people need to band together and say, you know what? We don't have to put up with this. We can ride bicycles. And then to have the unity to be able to stick together and do it. Because when you do that, you know, you're going to send a really strong message, because that public transportation system is going to go bankrupt. So they're going to basically bankrupt themselves. Because remember, they initiated this thing. Because when you go all the way back, you see that big institutions are right there sitting at the same round table as these nefarious players that are making the rules, and they're just going right along. So you know, you can either be a pawn and go right along, or you can say, wait a minute, let's do this. Let's get together and say, you know what, we don't need to go to Costa Rica. And if you're in Costa Rica, I'm not telling you what to do, but this is the kind of place you're in. And I know, I know people love their countries and why they're there and everything, but I would urge you to consider leaving. Absolutely, I would urge you to consider leaving and not sweeping this under the rug. Even if, I'm not saying permanently, temporarily, perhaps they will have a change of heart, and we would hope and pray that they would. But, you know, just to sit there and do nothing, ignore it, and be a cog, be a pawn, be pushed around, be told what to do. If this is the kind of brave new world you're interested in, then be my guest. But people in the Netherlands, they would just have none of it. That's the kind of spirit. I love seeing that kind of spirit. You know, the spirit is the spirit of freedom. It's the spirit of freedom. They're not going to be told what to do. And, you know, they're just not buying into it. And it's a form of peaceful, pacifist, non-cooperation, which is non-confrontational, which is amazing. You know, to be able to think outside the box and come up with these responses that are non-confrontational. Let's do this. Let's be non-confrontational and come up with different ways of doing things that sends a strong message to these places like Costa Rica or any others, which there's plenty of them that I could mention on this video, in Central America and South America and other places, and even in places that are normally understood to be quote-unquote first world countries. Because you look at what's happening in the States, and the states that liberated their people early on are the most prosperous places now. Their economies are just prospering, whereas the ones that are buying into this narrative are just breaking down and falling apart. So, you know, look, I'm just calling it as I see it. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. I'm just sharing what I'm seeing around the globe, and I'm seeing places where the spirit of freedom is alive and well, and I'm talking about it. So, you know, let me know in the comments what's on your mind, and you know, let's have a short conversation about it. And you know, do you think you have to live in Costa Rica? Do you think you have to go to Costa Rica? Do you want to go to Costa Rica anymore after hearing this? So the truth has already been out for months. You've got fudged numbers, you've got a narrative that's distorted, blah, 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 blah. You've heard it, right? If you haven't, well, I recommend you do some studying. It's like I was on this, watching this video where people were saying what a tough time they were having with the chain institutional shopping stores, and somebody said, well, boycott them, and somebody got really upset at that comment, because it's like, you know, what world are you living in? You can't do that. It's like everything's corporate in America. Well, I'm saying you need to think about outside the box, because there's always another option. It may not be something you have thought about yet or considered yet, but there are always other options. Where there's a will, there's a way. It can be done. And if you need a little assistance, then seek out people that are same-minded, because they can help you with some of these solutions. So, you know, you just got to get out of that way of thinking, of the way you've always done things. And I know that I'm not saying it's easy, but there's always another option. On this channel, we're all about telling the truth, sticking to the facts, and talking about how things really are, how they actually are. We've always been about educational and informational. So, all right, well, thanks for listening, and have a wonderful day.